What's going on, boys and girls, and welcome back to another episode of the Eating Shit podcast. If you're new here, the point of this show is to quickly come on here once a week and share the lessons I've learned with you guys in real time so you don't have to make the same dumbass mistakes that I have. Stupid. Or just learn from my experiences in general. If the episode provided value for you, share the show on your story or send it to someone you think would benefit from it. Also, do me a favor and throw up a 5-star review on the podcast app or a thumbs up on YouTube if you're watching there. Help me out with the organic reach. So quick lesson this week, not really like a lesson as like we did anything wrong, but just sitting here reflecting, trying to come up with some stuff for the show and also just thinking about the week. I think a big lesson that everyone can learn from is through a conversation that I had with my partner Wes yesterday. So you guys that know us personally know that we're pretty different. Which I think makes a good partnership. You know, looking back, if you guys listen to episode 1, I talk about how we met and all that type of stuff. But knowing what I know now about partnerships, I just got super lucky with Wes because like literally anyone could have come to me at that time and been like, we should partner up. And I would have been like, okay. Knowing what I know now, it seems that most successful partnerships have two partners that kind of have opposite traits, and we have a lot of opposite traits. We're similar in some ways, but more so we have those opposite traits, and that's why we kind of balance each other out in certain ways. You really don't need two of the same exact person when you have a partnership. So, with him, he struggles a lot more than I do with like playing the comparison game. And it's something that I don't really think about all that often. But if he struggles with it, I'm sure a lot of you guys struggle with it too. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. But I think that comparing yourself to other people, it can serve you in some ways, but mostly it just hurts you, especially if you use it kind of the way that he does. So like when I compare myself to other people, there might be like a momentary like feeling of jealousy or like feeling down on yourself, like, man, I wish I was there, but that's it. I really just use the comparison to like prove to myself that it's possible. Like if I see someone that's doing way better than me or doing things that I want to be doing eventually, I use that and say like, okay, if that dude can do it, so can I, and like use it more as a roadmap. Whereas him and a lot of other people, they play the comparison game in a totally negative way where they see someone doing what they want to do, and then they kind of internalize that and feel bad about themselves because they're not there yet, or they should be there already, especially if it's like someone younger or the same age or something like that. And so he was having some feelings like that this week, and I had to kind of remind him that a lot of it is not reality and a lot of it's just perception anyway. Like the guys that he named off, it's like, yeah, everything he said about them was true. Like, yeah, they're all strong sales profiles and like, usually it's those type of people that we see, especially in our business with flipping and wholesaling. Like we see guys that have strong sales profiles, they get into the business and then seemingly are immediately successful because they know how to just like hustle and make money and do deals. The flip side of that is that usually their businesses are just a fucking dumpster fire. Other than revenue is never really a problem for them, but every other issue you can have in business, they have. So again, good and bad. But, when Wes sees someone like that, he thinks like, oh, I'm not really like that. So that means that I can't be like an entrepreneur. And, to me, it's like, that's not true at all. There's tons of people that have the opposite personality types of those guys that are successful entrepreneurs. So he needs to remember that. And I'm sure some of you guys do, whatever you do too, whatever it is that you're like negatively comparing yourself against. And really like it goes back to programming too. Like Wes is a much, much better salesperson than he gives himself credit for. And like, when you talk to him about that stuff, he knows that, but it's just kind of like internal thoughts. And I deal with the same thing to some degree. That's like the reality of it. And the perception as well, like the way that he perceives himself is not real. I've had to talk to him about this many, many times. He's one of the smartest dudes that I know, and there's just absolutely no way that he becomes a failure in any way, shape, or form. It's not even possible. And, he just has that type of fear that I don't really have. So we just have to have these conversations, and I have to kind of remind him about some of this stuff. But, and then also just like the reality of the situation, especially with social media. And, he's not even on social media, so this doesn't really apply to him, but obviously you guys are. That's how you're finding out about this shit. But, the social media for just about everyone, they only post the highlight reel. So even the people that are actually successful and are actually doing the things that they say they're doing, they're still only giving you the highlight reel 99% of the time. Maybe there's some people that are transparent and they'll post about losses or, times that they're struggling or whatever, but most of the time it's only the highlight reel. And this goes not even for business, just like your friends, like people that don't post about business at all. It's always grass is greener syndrome when you look in on someone else's life. It's always like, oh, they're in such a good relationship. They're always posting about doing stuff, but you just never know. As soon as the camera's off, like they could be, who knows what they're doing. So again, like you always have to take that stuff with a grain of salt. And I have to tell Wes that all the time too, because, he always brings up kind of the same people. And it's like, well, they're doing this and they're in this business model. And I'm just like, dude, yes, they are in that model. And yes, like they make good margin per deal, or they have what seems to be an easier model than we're in right now. But we don't know for sure because we can't look under the hood of their business and really see what's going on. Like maybe the stuff that they're telling us or that they post or whatever is true. Maybe it is the real numbers, but they're not giving us the whole story. Like, why would they? You'd have to really, really dig deep into it. And then that's where like, it's all like levels and perception as well. We think about the guys that are like one level ahead of us, like, oh, how did they do it? Or 2 levels ahead of us. But I was telling him, I'm like, dude, there's people that think the same shit that you're telling me right now. I just got that at the meetup like 2 days ago. People come up after and they're like, how did you do it? How did you get to where you are? And it's just like wherever you're at right now, that's your reality. And then you're looking to, 1-2 levels ahead of you. And to us, we're sitting here going through all these problems and, doing whatever. And then we're thinking, oh, how did they get to that spot? These other people. Those people, I can guarantee you, are thinking about people 2-3 levels ahead of them. How did they get to that spot? And then we have people that aren't quite as far as us, literally saying that to us. How did you get to that spot? How did you do it? So these are things that I think about all the time where, if I have these bad thoughts, they just kind of come and go. And that's why I haven't really thought to bring it up on the podcast before. But I know that him and many, many other people struggle with those type of internal thoughts. And most of them aren't real. I don't know. I think I really have something that I may have brought this up before. I just can't remember. But something that definitely shaped me to thinking like this is because back in like 2015, 2016, when I started listening to Andy Frisella, for whatever reason, he was the only business guy that I listened to back then. And his story was this crazy story of how it's taken them 20 years to get where they're at. I think they're on like year 25 of business right now. And then he has like, for the first 3 years in business, they didn't pay themselves at all. Him and his partner, for years 3 through 10, they paid themselves $695 a month. So he made like $56,000 or $54,000 combined for the first 10 years in business before they started making any money. And he still to this day harps on that all the time. He brings up that story all the time, and he tries to drill it into his listeners, that basically like it's going to take a long time, and good shit that's worth building takes a long time to build. So I just always had that. That was like my base, because that's when I first started learning about all this shit. And then I was just like, okay, like this guy said that, like it's going to take 10 years, going to take 20 years. So for me, I'm never like, oh, why aren't we at this level yet? Like, yeah, of course you always want to get there as fast as possible. But when you're in the day to day, you're kind of stuck in this time warp. Like just a year ago, like 1 year ago from right now, we had not gone to a real estate event. We had not joined Pineda's mastermind. We had no model of how a flipping and wholesaling business should work from the inside. Like nothing. This was just 1 year ago, coming up in like a week from now, where we went to that first event, and then we got the blueprint from people, and then we've got a lot of other education in the last year. It's only been 1 year. That seems like 5 or 10 years ago, because you're just stuck in this time warp when you do this shit every day and you work hard and you're dealing with all these problems and just trying to figure it out as you go. When you kind of like zoom out and look at it at a macro level, it's like we're super, super young in business. Like we're only, I don't know, I'm only like 5 years in, 5.5 years for when I started wholesaling. And so Wes and I, we partnered up in June of 19. So we're coming up on 4 years as a partnership. It's like no time at all. But then you get skewed by like the internet and then people that seemingly just are successful immediately. But almost always there is some backstory. We know this one guy that we met and same business as us. And he was like 18 months in and he's doing like 150 deals a year. And we're just like, what the fuck? Like, how do you do that so fast? And young guy. And then you look into him and he had already started, grown, and sold one business. And, you know, he's like 26, 28 years old, something like that. It's like, okay, well, that dude has, even though he's younger, he has more business experience. Like he's already been through this shit one time. So he's on his second business. Like how much faster, like if we had to start from zero right now, which we basically just did like 6 weeks ago, how much faster could we do the same exact business or even a different business with what we know now? That's why rich people, even if they fail, you know, later on in life, they file bankruptcy, whatever, their shit doesn't work out. That's why they always seem to get it back, because you can't take away the skill set that they've built just by being in business and doing this shit for so long. So we always have to keep that in mind too. And that's just like another warped perception of reality, I guess. So hopefully you guys can, you know, get some value with that. If you struggle with like the comparison game or like feeling like you're not far enough ahead, or, you know, it's just not like that's the name of this podcast is eating shit. Like how long can you eat shit? Because like, if you do the right action for a long enough period of time, you will win. Like that's all there is to it. It's that simple. Like business can always be related back to fitness. That's why it blows my mind when you see people that are like jacked and their entire life other than that is a total wreck, because it's the same shit. Like no one goes to the gym and gets ripped in a day or a week or a month or even a year, really, if you start with nothing or you're overweight or whatever. Like it just takes years and years and years of doing the right actions, going to the gym and eating right. You don't have to do anything that's like reinventing the wheel. Same with business. Like just do a business that other people have already done. Like you don't need to be Elon Musk to be an entrepreneur or successful in business. And you don't have to come up with anything different that's never been done before in fitness. You really, especially in fitness, like you really don't even have to do that much. Like all you have to do is show up and like work out, but you don't have to like bodybuild and like go to failure and do all this crazy shit to like get in shape and like be in the top probably 3% of people. You just have to do the right actions for a long enough period of time, and you get fit. Same thing with business. Show up, do the right shit for a long enough period of time, and it works. It all works. So a couple wins this week before we close it out. We closed our biggest wholesale ever. That would have been on this Tuesday. And it was actually a piece of dirt. Weird enough, we just like randomly got this. We've had a lot of land leads, and most of them you can't do shit with because they're like worthless or weird or whatever. This one, it was a lot up on Mount Rose Highway, South Reno here, and good lead, you know, motivated seller that it used to have a structure on the lot before, big house, and it burned down, and the sellers took the insurance money. So anything they got for the dirt was just icing on the cake. Super laid back, didn't really care what happened to it. And with dirt, it's like, you know, what the fuck are we even going to do with this? Like, we don't even do land, and especially a dirt that we couldn't like build multifamily on or something like that. It's just like a single family lot. And it's like, fuck, well, let's lock it up for as little as possible. So we offered her 100,000. She said yes. We locked it up quite a while ago. I think it was like the first of the year or something like that. And then this was also the first time that we did MLS for our dispo strategy, and the first time that we've ever had to double. Well, we didn't have to, but the first time that we double closed anything. So it was a good learning experience on a lot of stuff. But yeah, basically there was a comp not right next to it, kind of a couple streets over, and then up there. It's like, who knows when you're dealing with that stuff if that's even comparable or not. But with utilities, it sold for 220,000. And then there was ones on this street that have sold a long time ago, like 2015, 2016, for like 150, 160, somewhere in there. So we figured that 100,000 was a good deal, but it's just going to be hard to sell because that's like, you got to sell that to an owner builder or a spec builder or something like that. We can't really dispo that the same way that we do our regular wholesales because that's not a flipper or a rental guy buyer. So what we did was list it on the MLS, and then we listed it for 160,000. And seller was cool with it. Of course, we're going to tell her everything that's going on. Always super transparent. We were able to list it on her behalf, and then so we had it in contract, and then we're basically just using MLS to advertise it instead of like Investor Lift or bang phones for the buyers list and stuff like that. Priced it at 160,000, which I thought was a screaming deal, and it was just because it's land, it's buried under 4 feet of snow, so there's no way that you can do any like inspections or anything like that. And we wanted to move it. Don't get greedy, like we have a huge fee in there anyway. So we listed it, went right into contract. First buyers tried to like nickel and dime us and ask for a price reduction. We had 3 written backup offers, so we just said no, and then it didn't even go back on market. Went right into that second backup offer that was actually for 20K higher. So we went back into contract at 180,000. No inspections, cash, 10,000 EMD. So as soon as we signed that, his EMD went hard. So that's a great sign that he's actually going to close it. And they closed it. So we ended up just double closing it, which means that we actually bought the dirt for a day and then resold it instead of just assigning it. So we brought the money, we actually purchased it from the seller for the 100,000, and then we resold it the next day for 180,000 to this end buyer. So crazy good deal. After paying for his buyer's agent and a couple other fees, 2 sets of closing costs, stuff like that, should be like 72,000 net. Fucking great for a wholesale, and it's a piece of dirt. Definitely want to look into doing dirt more if we can take down some bigger deals like that. And the sellers, for dirt, very much less attached emotionally than like an owner occupant that's in their house, and just way easier to deal with in general. So that was a huge win for us, definitely. And a couple of firsts with the MLS dispo and the double close there. And then we also got our first Alabama deal assigned. So that's good. We knew with all these first Alabama deals that we just don't know what we don't know. We know that some of them are going to be too high. We think that they're deals, but they're probably not. I think that all of them are deals to the right buyer. We just don't have the right buyers there yet. So we got one of them assigned, which is really good. We're just waiting for that one to close. And then we're going to start doing MLS dispo on those ones as well. So we just locked up one on Wednesday. That's going to be our first MLS dispo. Has a fucking tree through the house. So again, the seller doesn't give a fuck what we do with it, as long as they get their price. So we told them, we can likely find, an end buyer to partner with this on, if we advertise it on the MLS, give us 60 days, totally cool with it, all in the know with what's going on. So we're going to test that there. And I'm optimistic that that's going to be a good way for us to find some buyers for these deals that we know are good deals. If you hold them as rentals, they're just not the best deals to the locals because they're so used to having, these type of deals available to them forever. So, that about wraps it up for this episode. Thanks for listening. Share the show for me, and we will see you next week.